bit on the call with Washington County mayors.
Me too, that was nice.
Yeah, it was a nice call.
Yeah.
Safe space.
I thought you were gonna take it easy on me, they did, yeah, it was great.
It's nice when it's not a public meeting and we can all just kind of. Washington County mayors.
Me too.
Yeah.
About the feedback.
I'm sorry, Keith, what'd you say?
That was you.
I think that was feedback from the.
Oh, that was me.
Yeah.
It's the delay.
So I sound like.
Wasn't me. I'm mute, so.
So advancing slides. I just had the keyboard. Yes, you can. Thank you. Great.
We're just waiting to make sure we're live.
You bet.
Go.
We're good?
Yeah. All right, welcome everybody. We'll call this work session of the Sherwood City Council to order at 5:32 p.m. On November 7th, 2023. We got two items for our work session tonight. We have Pat Garrett, our sheriff, here to talk to us a little bit about challenges with staffing over at our jail over in Washington County. Talk to us, and we're also going to talk about the Sherwood West letter of interest for the urban growth boundary a little bit later. But just jumping right in, thank you so much for coming out tonight, and you guys have been great partners. I'm sure Ty would back me up, our chief, on that. We really appreciate all the work you guys do for Sherwood and the partnership and everything. We're very interested in learning more about some of the challenges we're having and how we can help. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Sheriff Pat Garrett, and I'm joined on my right by Under Sheriff Fabrice Massey, and on my left by Jail Commander Dave Marzilli. The Sherwood Police Department are great partners. Everyone there, we enjoy working with them every day and every night. So my thanks to Chief Hanlon and his team. With respect to jail staffing and jail capacity, we're going to take about 15 minutes and would love to entertain questions along the way. Don't wait, until we're over. Just jump right in there. If you have a question, we can answer. I'm going to cover basically how we got to the position that we are at today. And where we are at today, just to jump ahead, we have a 33% vacancy rate in our jail deputies and corporals. So that's really the backbone of how the jail gets run day and night for our jail deputies and corporals. We have 39 vacancies or a 33% vacancy rate. Talk a little bit about how we got there. We're going to cover just effective strength, the assignments that jail deputies do in the jail to run it, the change in characteristics about our adults in custody really since the pandemic. What's different about them today than before the pandemic, and why that has changed a bit. Just kind of cover some of our state and federally mandated services that we're obligated to provide on a consistent basis. We want to do that to keep everybody safe and make sure that their constitutional rights are upheld. And then really the decisions that we have made as a result of our staffing crisis, and I think that's not a word that is overly dramatic. It is a crisis, and we that is how we are treating this and how we are messaging our county to support us as we recover staff back up. So just kind of run through a bit about how we got here. It starts really with the pandemic. During the pandemic, our jail staff were literally masked up the entire time they worked in the jail for just over 2 years. They did a fantastic job to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 in the jail at that time, but it became a more stressful environment because as the courts initially stopped and then chugged along at a very slow pace, our most dangerous adults in custody, those generally charged with Measure 11 offenses, began to kind of stack up. They didn't move through the jail. They got stuck in the jail, and their numbers more than doubled, and correlated with assaults on staff, which more than doubled as well during that time. The proportion of adults in custody who were sentenced and serving a sentence of generally less than a year or pre-sentenced was about 50-50 before the pandemic. During the pandemic, those proportions changed so that today, and for some time now, we have about a 20% sentenced proportion of adults in custody. So they're serving a sentence, they're going to programs. They're generally not a lot of maintenance to serve those adults in custody. Folks who are not sentenced are generally detoxing. They're coming unmedicated. They are significantly high proportion of those with mental illness, and we do everything we can on the street, as does Chief Hanlon's team, to divert people away from the justice system. But if a crime is committed, sometimes we don't have an option, and they end up in jail. And they need to see a defense attorney on a regular basis. Family connections are important, and they got to have out time. And so there's just more to do with people who are pre-sentenced, and that rate really rose significantly across the pandemic and is still present today. Recruitment and retention challenges intensified as we came out of the pandemic. Jail deputies who had other options began to take those other options rather than continue to work in the jail. And we had some very enterprising police officers come into our booking with someone in custody and say, you know what, you don't have to, you can come work for us and be a police officer. And so, and I will tell you, jail deputies,
We would never do that.
they excellent police officers. They make very good police officers. So we understand that attraction. Just a quick data point on this slide, the second blue box down on the right, the recruitment decline. If you compare those applicants who made it past their minimum qualifications into backgrounds, dropped by 62% from the beginning of 2020 to the fourth quarter of 2022. And we had the same amount of work or fewer and fewer staff. So our rates of burnout and stress just went up, and our retirement eligible deputies began to leave sooner. And so our turnover rate went up during the course of 2022 and really took off from about the second quarter of 2023 to get to today a 33% vacancy rate. When it comes to who do we have in custody, you know, how has that changed over time? I touched on that a little bit with respect to those adults in custody who are just more challenging to manage and more dangerous, grew in numbers. Frankly, those who are detoxing from either fentanyl or methamphetamine or other hard drugs are on the rise. You'll see a graph on that later. And our jail deputies will tell you, they see people coming in and out of custody over time. Some of them are repeat offenders, and they know who's using meth, who's smoking meth. And the meth that we have today in the community is more potent than it has ever been, and it is having a more tragic impact just on the behavioral health of folks who have substance use disorder that's untreated.
That's good.
Yes.
I'm backtracking a little bit, but I did want to ask a question related to the staffing stuff. You mentioned pre-code is about 50-50 pre-sentence, post-sentence, and it went up to 20%, 80%. Well, now, has it started going down again at all? Because we've been past COVID for quite some time.
It's really not.
So why do we expect that it hasn't started going back down again?
There is a defense attorney crisis, which
Okay.
is constraining the court's ability to move
So
cases.
the courts haven't been able to get back to their level of pace from pre-COVID because of other reasons.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
It doesn't, and I think there's a shortage on the prosecuting side.
There is for the number of cases that our county has through the court system. We have a small district attorney's office. That is absolutely true.
And I think I know the answer, but just for this group and people watching, you had mentioned the advertising budget was cut. The county controls your budget, right?
That is correct.
You guys don't, basically you can advise, but you don't really have control over your.
We make a request. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We make a request every year of the county to fund us. And the vast majority of the jail is funded through the general fund, which you may recall, there was a bit of a gap that was made up through some cuts
Nice way to say it.
last year. So we did have our advertising and marketing budget cut. It trailed off before 2021, 22, but it was cut at about the time we really saw applicants trail off. We have that restored, and really that's just in today's environment, whether you're the Sherwood Police Department or the Washington County Sheriff's Office, that marketing assistance is just really part of what we should have going for us. And we have some early positive results from that effort. When we look at the jail division, how many authorized positions do we have? And this is just a breakdown of those positions. We begin just with deputies and corporals, 140 budgeted. We currently have 101 positions filled. On the far left of this slide, you see non-housing. So those are deputies and staff that secure our courthouse. As you probably know, courthouse security is assigned to the jail division, and it always has been. It lines up well because jail deputies transport adults in custody to the court and back all the time, every day, all day, every day during the week. And so we have 14 jail deputies and corporals assigned to court security. We have 2 on the lower left box of this slide assigned as a temporary sergeant. We just need that leadership in the jail. One is assigned as a jail investigator to address our Prison Rape Elimination Act complaints. That is a federal act, and any other allegations relating to criminal conduct in the jail requires a full-time investigator. And then 2 transport deputies. We are transporting adults in custody to various other jurisdictions in the Portland metro area and up and down the Willamette Valley. That leaves 79 in jail housing. If we were fully staffed, instead of 79, it would be 118. So that's where those vacancies really hit us the hardest. We have 72 that are working in the jail independently on their own. They're out of training. 5 recruits are in training, and then 2 are in extended leave. So that's our breakdown. 79 in the center is working jail housing, intake and release. And if we were fully staffed, that would be 118. And in July of 2021, we had 1 jail vacancy, 1 deputy vacancy. So we have trailed off in staffing since then. Yes, sir.
With the recent gap that was covered where you lost some vacant positions, is that taken into account with the slide then?
We haven't lost vacant positions. We just have we have vacancies. We have 39 vacant positions. We still are budgeted at the same amount. We just have vacancies that we need to fill.
Were they not eliminated though as part of the?
They're not eliminated.
Okay.
Right, they're just vacant.
Well, I assume that's a lot of overtime happening then,
It's an incredible amount of overtime, yes, ma'am.
which is leading to burnout.
Yes.
Which is exhaustion.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So our obligation was to align our capacity with the available staff we have to work the jail, hence why we have 3 housing units temporarily closed. Because the burnout was contributing to folks who were departing. To the county's credit, our commissioners have supported incentivizing some overtime in the jail so that those who are working patrol and happen to be dual certified or working patrol that could do some limited duty in the jail because they're not a jail deputy. It's incentivizing patrol to come out and help out in the jail on their day off. And so it's relieving some of that pressure on jail staff to be able to do that.
Is the jail staff able to take their leave and sick days though without it impacting?
They are,
Significantly?
yeah, so discretionary leave, let's just say a jail deputy wants to take their Tuesday off. They want to come in and put in a time off slip and take off Tuesday. That's not happening. That's almost not happening at all. However, they do bid for a guaranteed vacation. It's in our contract, 2 weeks of every 6 months. And we absolutely honor those. And of course, if someone is sick, we would rather they stay home and get well. Right.
Thank you. I'm gonna talk a little bit about how the jail is staffed and talk a little bit about the changing adult in custody that we have or inmate that we have in the workload that's kind of associated with that in the jail. Our jail is a very busy jail. It's designed as a direct supervision jail, which means that the adults in custody are outside. It was designed for them to be outside of their cells as much as possible, with a deputy who is in that pod with them, talking with them, and just interacting with them. They're not, a lot of jails are indirect where they're locked behind a cell and the deputies walk around the outside or stay on the outside. Our deputies are right inside. And what we found historically is that creates a better environment for the adults in custody. It's safer for the staff, and it's safer for the people that are there. And it's also allows the staff to connect with them and find out if there's something going on, if they maybe had a bad phone call or had a bad time at court, they can see changes in behavior. And it just creates a lot lower stress level. COVID hit. Because we're a congregate setting, we had to separate the AICs, and they had to stay locked in their cells, which are small and not designed for that. And so that increased some of the stress level, along with health concerns, increased mental health concerns, drug addiction, created a pretty tough environment for the deputies to work in. If you draw your attention to the table on the right, over a 24-hour period, the jail currently requires 42 posts to be manned by a deputy. And that's with those 3 pods closed that Sheriff Garrett mentioned. And those are mandatory posts, which means there's work associated with them that we have to have a deputy at that post. If we don't have enough staff to work, then that post gets closed down, but the work doesn't go away. And so somebody has to take up that workload and still complete those tasks. And so 42 is what we need on a 24-hour period. And that 42 shifts are divided, 42 posts are divided by 3 shifts. And so the chart on the left, the minimum shift breakdown, day shift has 16 of those posts, swing shift has 15, and graveyard has 12. Day shift and swing shift need more because there's more going on, courts, medical checks, visitation, attorney visits, that kind of thing. So we have 42 posts per day. We have 72 deputies that we need to divide up amongst those 3 shifts, which reflected in the middle of 28, 26, and 18. That gives us an average on duty of, and it's an average of 16 deputies on day shift, 14.8, 10.3. On the right-hand side of that chart, it shows you there are some shifts, swing shift and graveyard, that prior to any sick time, prior to any vacation time, so in a perfect world, we don't even meet the minimum requirements to staff that shift. And so we have to make it up with overtime and have people come
From a
in.
safety point of view, I'm sure there's like must-have positions. You just
Yes.
can't have that pot open without.
Right.
sort of-
Yeah. Yes. In every one of these posts is like that for a safety concern. And even if, and I'll show a slide later on, but if we don't have a deputy to work a pod, then that pod gets shut down or locked down. It's not a punitive lockdown. It's a, hey, you're in your cell, you can't come out because we don't have a deputy, and every hour a deputy makes a round through there to make sure everybody's okay. And so they make those rounds, but you can't sustain that because that jail was not meant to have people locked down like that. And we have a legal obligation to give them time out of the cell for recreation and that kind of thing. And so that's the competing harm that we have here is we need to staff the jail. We can't have them locked down because we have, the jail's too many staff that we have currently.
I'm sure that brings some stress and anxiety to the ones in the cell, anger,
Mhm. Yes.
TikTok,
Yeah, because they,
heightens.
yes, yeah, before COVID, I heard stories that the AICs they would say, can I go back into my cell? Because they've been out so long that they want to go in. Now it's the opposite.
Well, I think it was, God, it's been, 7 or 8 months since we did that tour
Yeah,
over there, the infamous day we got stuck
When
in
you
the
got lost in the
elevator.
elevator?
With all the Washington County mayors,
Yeah.
you guys took a different one maybe?
no, I was in there with you,
Well,
sir.
that's right.
I was in the trenches with you.
But that was a fun day, but I was, your point about keeping them out, so I was actually surprised when you took us into one of those pods and how open it was, and how much sunlight, it was very spacious, not what you see on TV. Your typical movies about jails, so yeah, I can see why people would want to be out. Yeah.
Kind of a busy slide. I think the takeaway on this is the bottom right corner with the circled 5. That is every shift. On average of the month, we're down 5 deputies with the losses. Once people are on vacation or they're off sick, or we're just short-staffed, we're down 5 deputies per shift, 3 shifts a day. So on average, 15 deputies a shift that we have to make up on overtime. And so the top line, the blue line is the amount of shifts in work hours in a month, broken down to work hours. So for example, for October, there were 13,020 work hours that we had required in the jail. That red line is hours on duty, the people that showed up, that reflects that 5 that each shift is short, or 8,370. So we have to make up that, someone's better with math than me, 5,000 hours, is that about right? Right, well,
Minus 8, 5.
actually, the math is right there, 4,030, right? That we have to make up with either forced or voluntary overtime, and that's very difficult to do. And quite often, we run out of staff to force overtime, because you can either only force them in early or hold them over late, and there's only 72 deputies. On average, you saw how many deputies have available to call in or to force, and we just don't meet it. And when that happens, we have to start triaging the posts on what are we gonna shut down to maintain operations of the jail. It's kind of like you just draw things in to let the core jail work. You start shutting these things down, but that work doesn't go anywhere because those AICs are still here and they still have those needs. So this just kind of talks a little bit about the operational gains that we've had in losses. The sheriff already talked about how we're losing staff to go to other agencies, or they transfer to our patrol division. And that's reflected on the turnover rate of 25.7% for fiscal year 22-23. On the left is a chart of our recruit deputies, broken down by year of how many we've had, and you can see the reduction in recruitment that we've had, of new hires that we've had coming in, of good qualified candidates that make it through a fairly rigorous evaluation process just to get hired. And then once they're hired, they go into a field training evaluation FTEP program where they're getting with a coach. And again, not everybody is successful with that. And so this latest 2023 year to date, we've had 13 hires and we've lost 2, so 83% retention. That doesn't match up to who we're losing. We're still losing more every month than we're able to hire.
2020, 2021, there was.
Yeah, right. And there's a certain amount of failures in that FTEP program. That's what it's designed for. It's not designed to have people fail, but it's designed to evaluate them, to make sure they can do the job properly and be effective deputies and work on their own when they're in there. And so there's a certain amount that we know we're going to lose. That's, FTEP is kind of part of the hiring process as well. And so, that just kind of shows that story of where we're at with the losses there. I talked a little bit about pod lockdowns. It's not a punitive lockdown. It just means that we don't have a deputy in that pod to let them out to do the normal things that have to get done. And so we monitor that closely because, they have to be fed. They have to have their out time out of the cell. They have to have their medication passed. We have to do detox checks and those kind of things. And so we monitor that pretty closely to make sure, that we're accomplishing all those things. And so we started tracking that. And so the pods in the lobby is another important part of the jail. That's where family and friends come in and visit. That one-on-one, even through a pane of glass, is a personal interaction that is important to the welfare of the adult in custody. It helps them do that. It's also how their attorneys are able to have legal visits with them, or attorney investigators to have meetings with them and talk to them face to face, so they can kind of work through their trial. And hopefully get adjudicated. When that closes down, those things don't happen, and that adds to that increased frustration and slowdown of what's going on. You look through there on the right hand side of that chart, you can see it sort of steadily increased every month until June and July. We had pods shut down for a total of 335 hours a month. So that's each time there was a pod shut down, we put a tick mark in there and track that. We started paying double overtime for sheriff's office staff, both patrol and jail deputies, to work housing in the jail to kind of help offset some of that and incentivize folks to work in there. That was in August, was when that happened. And you can kind of see the impact that it started to have in August, and then in September, it was down, it was cut way down to 86, just over 86 hours, so that's good. That means that those pods are open, they're operating normally. Mandated tasks, things that we have to get done are getting done.
But to get there, you have to close other pods.
To get there, we had to close other pods to free up, to free up the staff and to reduce the workload to get there, and so.
Which has other impacts, which I'm sure you covered, right?
It does, yes, yeah, and so we closed our second pod. We've had one pod closed since COVID. It's a dormitory pod, it's a congregate setting, it has eight beds per cell, and so when COVID hit, you couldn't have 8 people together, and so we just closed that. And we opened it for a short time after COVID, but because of the way that pod is designed, and you have AICs intermingled, and you need to have a deputy in there all the time to make sure if if there's a problem arises, we have somebody that can handle it rather than just leave them in there alone. And so that needed a deputy in there all the time. We couldn't shut that down, and so we closed it, and that's been closed since COVID. We then closed a second pod in August, and that helped bring back some of the resources to do all those other things. And it also reduced the workload because one less pod worth of work. And then last month we closed our third pod. And that was part of what helped as well, was that workload decreased. The sheriff talked about our pre-sentence jail AIC population, how it's changed. This is jail housing that we have, and it kind of shows the level of, this is pre-sentenced AICs in there. So you can see it steadily increases. I think the latest number was we have 12% sentenced in there. So 88 pre-sentenced, 88% pre-sentenced AICs. And they're limited on what they can do inside the jail, but they also have an increased workload with them because they have court hearings they have to go to. We have to transport them. Some of them are new, so they have to get classified and get put in the correct pod. So that requires work. They're on detox sometimes when they come in. Hopefully, once they're in the jail for a while, they don't get a hold of drugs, and so they're not on detox. But when they're brand new and they come in, they're on detox. So all that stuff adds to an increased workload across the jail.
Is there a time limit that somebody can be held and not get from pre-sentence to, is there a?
There's some new case law on that.
There's like a right to a.
There's a right.
A speedy trial or whatever, but.
Complex, they often will waive that right to a speedy trial, especially if it's a complex case, because they know that it's gonna take the attorney and them a while to build their case, and if there are mental health concerns, then you're adding in evaluations, whether you were in state hospital potentially, and.
So somebody can be in pre-sentence for a long time, probably.
Especially for the more serious crimes, yeah.
Provided they're represented.
Provided the representative, exactly.
The new timeline we have is, we must release an individual if they're not assigned an attorney within 7 days following their first appearance. That was federal Judge McShane's order just this past Friday, which he affirmed, I believe, today. And in the past, it's not been our job to monitor who's represented and unrepresented. It's always been the courts, right? The courts figure that out. We just keep them safe. Now it's our responsibility. So it's from a management standpoint, that's something new that we're having to track literally every day.
So maybe I'm wrong about this, but I remember reading somewhere that on the other side of the equation where people are serving their sentences, there were some changes in state law where you're having to deal with more inmates on that side of the equation, or am I missing something?
There's an appellate case, or maybe Oregon Supreme Court case called Ramos. Frankly, I don't remember the full name, where non-unanimous jury verdicts are being returned to counties across the state to be retried. Right, so that we are getting a lot of Department of Corrections adults in custody back. I don't have the number, but it's more than a few to be retried by the DA's office. Yes, sir.
This is just another kind of representation of the impacts of the jail and the staffing and the pod lockdowns we've had in the type of AICs that adults in custody that we have in the jail now, with increased mental health, increased drug addiction problems, increased time that they're locked in their cell, it creates more uses of force in the jail. And so this is just a graphic representation of the increase of that. And the bottom line on that is, on average, you can expect that there'll be a use of force in the jail every 2 days. It's a breakdown of how that works. So for every AIC we have in there, there's 0.5 use of forces. Doesn't mean that every AIC is going to have a use of force. Some of them have multiple ones, and some of them are minor use of force where they might not want to come out of the cell, they might not want to go back into the cell, and so we have to escort them back in, all the way to somebody who barricades himself in their cell and doesn't want to come out and take a shower, doesn't want to come out of the cell for a court process or something like that. And then we have to
Gently nudge them.
sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes unfortunately it takes more than that, yeah. But there are more of those in the jail, and it's tough for the deputies to deal with that every single day with that higher level of stress. Detox protocols, we talked a little bit about this. This chart is a little bit deceiving, although it did decrease during the summertime a little bit. That's also the time that we started closing pods. And so the population has decreased as well. But it is steadily increasing to 31% in the last 22 months. What that is somebody comes in and they're addicted to drugs or alcohol, and they go through a detox process while they're in the jail. Takes medication, they take more checks, medical is more in tune to them, and the deputies have to check on them more often. They're very medically fragile because of the detox. You can die from that if it goes untreated. And so the deputies have to maintain checks on them. And again, it's high stress because sometimes they have medical emergencies that we have to respond to, and the deputies have to deal with that. And you can imagine it's increased stress on them of having to worry about that. Some of these poor folks are in there and they can't even get off the floor of their cell to go out and be seen by medical or to take their medication. And we do gently help them out. And I helped the deputy do this last month, take them out of the cell and bring them and put them in a chair so that medical can see them and get their medication, make sure they take it properly and those kind of things. And it is really sad that the folks are in that situation when they come in, but that is a reality, and it's constantly, it's on the rise.
So those monthly numbers are the number of detox situations you're dealing with each month.
Yeah, the number of individual AICs should add up to, according to what I have here, just over 3,500 AICs on detox from January 2022 to current. 76 of them were on detox once while in our custody in the last 1.5 years, and 24% have been on detox at least 2 times in the last 1.5 years. So they're in, they go out, they come back, and we have a fair amount of repeat customers that are in there. Fentanyl is a very, it's a terrible drug, and people come in on fentanyl, they sneak it in and they get it in intake, and sometimes they take it, or right before they're arrested, they'll take it and they'll overdose. Our deputies all have fentanyl. We have fentanyl in the pods. Naloxone, I'm sorry, fentanyl. Jeez. They do not, our deputies do not have fentanyl, so they have naloxone. I do.
But thanks for clearing that up. for
Yes,
people watching.
thank you. I appreciate that.
But on any given day, you have like, what, 5 to 10 AICs.
Oh,
that are
definitely, yeah.
in detox.
Yes, sir, at least, yeah, it is, and it's tough.
Do you think the Measure 110 had any impact on that and not basically legalizing the small? No, I mean, the reality question, more people are staying hooked because it's more easily accessible because they're not getting in trouble for carrying it, or...
So this is, as the sheriff, I had a little more liberty to make some comments about that. So this is just my opinion. If Measure 110 had not been passed and fentanyl showed up anyway, which it would have, right? It would have had a very negative impact on our community. Measure 110, in my opinion, normalized possessing any and all dangerous drugs. It's literally legal to do, and just threw gasoline on what was what would have been a very significant problem for our community to deal with. it's an absolute epidemic, and Measure 110 is a contributing factor, in my opinion. We didn't have the infrastructure to provide the treatment that we have, and so people are wallowing in their own substance use disorder, and until we find a way to nudge them into treatment, and we have treatment that is available on demand, we're gonna just remain, unfortunately, in my view, in this current situation.
What's the total AIC again right now, or roughly?
I'm sorry.
The total AIC roughly?
Population?
Yeah.
Our capacity now is 388. I didn't check on the way down, but we're probably around 350 to 360 right now. Actually inside of the facility. Part of that is because we have a pod that's for the females, and it's usually about half full. And each pod is 62 beds in there, and so that's.
So you're as full as you can be unless you get more
Yes.
female. then.
Yeah, and we have to maintain a certain amount of empty beds they call it functional capacity, to move people around. We can't, we need an empty bed to put somebody, to bring somebody else in. And when a new custody comes in, they go into a certain pod where they're classified risk. And they can go through the detox and make sure that they're not sick, they have a flu or COVID or anything like that. And then we move them to other parts of the facility. And so we need to have a certain amount of empty beds. So maximum capacity, if we're full, every bed was full, 388 today.
This is a very busy slide. This was a detailed jail work task analysis. And so the bigger the font, the more times that task gets accomplished. And I'll just give you two examples. Professional visits. We might not think professional visits. Why is that so? Why is it, number one, that's important? And number two, it happens multiple times a day. As I said earlier, we have a defense attorney shortage, also frankly, a crisis. And so if we don't have, let's say, swing shift goes on on duty, and they're down 5 right before we get people to work overtime. But let's say we only get 4 to work overtime. So we got to close a post, and so we're going to close the lobby as a result, so that everybody on the inside is fully staffed and fully operational. So if we close the lobby and a defense attorney shows up to meet with one of their clients and we can't get a meeting, that's a big deal. The presiding judge then calls me and says, "Sheriff, defense attorneys need to meet with their clients." Yes, Your Honor, you're right. They do. That's part of moving them through the court process. So that's a really important post. And then let's see here, MedPass. So for those of us who's ever been on a medication protocol, you kind of need to take that at the same time every day, or multiple times at the same time every day. And so when we don't have enough staff to do MedPass, I mean, that is that's super important responsibility that we have, that we need to get right every day. So that gets us really to what, kind of the so what factor of what we just kind of laid out. Thank you for your patience. We need to maintain a jail that we can function on the inside as it was designed to function, so we can keep people safe and not run staff into the ground, adequately respond to emergencies. And to do that, we just had to align jail capacity with available staff to run the jail. Booking criteria. This is, we loathe having to establish booking criteria to help us manage our population. But that is also where we're at. And so we have asked our police officers and our patrol deputies to bring individuals in custody to jail to be booked if they are charged with any felony, a person, class A misdemeanor, of course, driving under the influence, if they can't find a responsible party to watch over that person, if they're issued a citation, criminal trespass 1, that's a misdemeanor, but it's a big deal. And then any offense subject to a mandatory arrest, like domestic violence or a violation of a restraining order. Exceptions are certainly granted as needed when that patrol sergeant calls a jail sergeant and says, "Look, this person who I have in custody, I have in the back of my patrol car, he shoplifted from Fred Meyer. I was out with him yesterday. I gave him a citation. He's back doing it again." That's the kind of person we want brought to jail, because that's the kind of immediate sanction that person needs to hopefully have the impact to be discouraged from chronically reoffending. Decisions and recommendations. What is in blue text are recommendations we've made to the county. In black text, we have made these decisions, right? So we've reduced our capacity from 572 to 388
I apologize. On the previous slide, for context, because obviously as you've had to shut down pods, you've had to change the guidance you're giving to the individual police departments on what you can take in. Could you talk a little bit about what we're, besides the exceptions, what we're not doing, what we used to be doing?
Yeah, the biggest one is theft too. That's really what I hear most from our deputies and from police chiefs is like, look, if somebody commits theft and the value is less than $1,000, we're not booking them in jail. We are requiring, just won't mince words, we're requiring police officers to issue a citation to appear in criminal court for theft too, which is a misdemeanor. That is misdemeanor theft of less than $1,000. And that is no small matter. That's not a minor theft, something that's $999. And we are not booking those individuals in jail. That's probably the biggest one. Disorderly conduct is another one that is it's very challenging for our patrol folks and on the whether it's municipal or county. Where let's just say, for example, someone is out in the middle of the street obstructing traffic. That is disorderly conduct, and that is a charge that we are requiring to issue a citation. Now, if that patrol sergeant calls the jail booking sergeant and it makes a request for an exception, we're absolutely entertaining those to the very extent that we can. When I was at the Hillsborough City Council a few weeks ago, we looked at the previous week and had made about 21 exceptions to bring folks in that didn't otherwise qualify. So jail sergeants are doing the best that they can. But yes, it's no small matter.
Yeah, I appreciate you answering that, because I think it's important for the public to understand why we have that criteria. It's not because we don't believe a crime was committed, right? It's more about just capacity.
Thank you, Mayor. That's absolutely right.
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
So, just working down the steps that we've taken, a few things I want to call out to bolster the capacity that we have to move additional applicants through the application process. We have some authorization from the county to have additional background investigators. Super important, as you know, to move someone through a backgrounding process. We are continuing with our contracted marketing firm. We are recommending a retention bonus for lateral hires, those folks that we can plug and play. And also direct support. We're asking the county if they could temporarily assign a talent acquisition specialist to help us manage this bolstered recruiting effort that we have underway to help us make it as efficient and effective as possible. And then we are working with our police department partners. Let's just say you have a recruit officer. They've got great character. They're in public service for the right reason, but they're just struggling with geography, for example, or multitasking. They could make an excellent jail deputy, and we're just asking for a warm handoff. So we can just talk to them about our team and this opportunity. And that has paid off and with several applicants so far. And just maintaining our community college partnerships. We host visits from area community colleges, and they make wonderful applicants as well.
Are you getting support? This may be a political question, so you probably won't answer it, but are you getting support from the county on this request? Because in my financial mind, if you're down 33%, there's a lot of salaries not going out. So there should be funds there to fulfill these requests.
You're absolutely right, Mayor, and that is helping us being able to incentivize overtime in the jail because of those personnel line items are underspent. And it's helping us pay for background investigators for this fiscal year. Some of what we have in the blue text on this slide, my recommendations have not been fulfilled, frankly, from the county, but we are in discussions and they're working with us, and I'm optimistic. But some of the requests that we've made are still being discussed.
Sure. Sorry, 2 slides ago for the exceptions for the booking criteria, the ones that are not being booked right now, is that public information as far as types and like numbers for that would normally be booked?
We're not tracking that per se, but we can count the number of criminal citations that we issue at the county. You know, police departments keep track of the number of criminal citations. They have that statistic. I'm sure that's available. And from our end, from the sheriff's office, I'd be happy to share that. how many our deputies are issuing. This slide just summarizes what it would take, the number of jail deputies and corporals that we would need to open. Let's say that first pod, which is the second square from the left, assess reopening that first pod. If we get our deputies and corporals from going back to our earlier slide, from 72 to about 103 or more. And if we hire 10 jail deputies every quarter, we hire on the quarter. Applications are open year round. It would take about 2 years to get to a point where we could open that first pod again. So our bolstered recruiting effort has to shoot for something greater than 10, right? So that's just a discussion point. 10 per quarter isn't going to get us there in under about 2 years. So that's our goal is to, of course, hire.
That's with normal attrition, right?
That's with normal attrition, yes. And I should say, thank you, Counselor, I should say that while we have 3 pods closed, we probably kept them open too long. It has had an immediate positive impact on the departures that we were seeing. People that has slowed way down. Ask if you have anything to add. You're truly the jail expert in the room here.
I don't have anything to add, but are there any additional questions?
Can you talk through, if you're not prepared to answer, don't worry about it, but Judge McShane's decision on the 7-day release policy, how is that being applied across the board to different types of offenders, and how does that affect your criteria?
Thank you for the question. What I can tell you is that the district attorney, our office, the courts, and our county council, we literally had a meeting at 4 o'clock today to make a plan about how to get that first appearance just as soon as they can after somebody arrives in our custody on a Department of Corrections return or shows up in custody from a probable cause arrest. Frankly, we don't have that figured out yet. It's too new, but our goal is to get that first court appearance just as soon as we can. It starts the clock. The courts do not like us to have people in custody and they're not going to court, right? They're not making that appearance because they're still being denied their Sixth Amendment rights. So we got to get that appearance in a timely manner, and then we have to have some reliable automated way to know if they're represented or not, so that we don't miss that 7-day timeline.
If we get to a point where we do have to release somebody, it's not just they're released with no conditions. The court release officer works with our deputies to come up with some stipulations on that release. It could be a responsible party. Hey, you need to stay with this person in their house and they're responsible for keeping an eye on you. It could be a GPS monitor on them. It could be a combination of that, or it could be you're on your own recognizance. That would be the least desirable one. So it's not just that they're sent out, see you later. They're sent out with some stipulations that they have to follow, but it has to be reasonable. It can't be something that they can't attain.
Hey, Mayor, quick question.
Yes.
Remind me, from once you identify a green recruit that you want to hire, what's the timeline from that date until that hire is no longer has to be supervised on the job?
If I understand your
Or be buddied up with a trainer?
It takes about 10 months from a new deputy beginning their work to being able to work on their own or in a solo capacity.
Yeah. Thanks.
You bet. Thanks for the question.
Any other questions for the sheriff and his team?
So you're going around to each city presenting this just for informational purposes? Is there anything you need from us? Except keep advocating at our county level for?
What you just said, yes, please, that would be fantastic, and we're visiting where we are invited. I should also say, though, that I'm just starting a media release about this information. Because we owe it to our community to be transparent about this, right? And so we're here tonight to talk about it. Thank you so much for inviting us. We really do love being here. We are not fans of why we're here, right? We are very, at least I am, sorry for these circumstances. And we're doing everything we can to address them. But we're also working on a wider message for our entire county, so that people know where we're at.
We'll get some recruits out of the media.
Right, thank you, yes, exactly.
Exactly
I
right.
love the way you think.
Yes.
Be part of the solution. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming today, and I appreciate you taking this up on the invite. Just a couple of months ago where you got some information from you, man, the DA, about what was going on, and you guys offered to come in. It's making an experience, because it's speaking for myself, public safety is job one. For all of us, whether it's at the county level or the city level. So anything I can do to help advocate with the county, as you guys are seeking funding and seeking resolutions to these problems, I'm happy to do.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate all your work. These spots. All right. All right, so we're going to move forward to the second item on our agenda, which is the Sherwood West letter of interest to Metro conversation. Say someone needs to tell Mark we're on this agenda item.
There's a couple chairs, right, Mark?
Right there. And are we good to keep going and we'll need a break? We're also.
Keep going.
Okay.
Oh, breaks allowed.
All right. Well, yeah, so this is our second agenda item. Eric, thank you for coming today. Appreciate you and the team's hard work on this. I know there's a lot of stuff going on right now, so we're anxious to see what you come up with and share it with pilots. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So here to talk about Sherwood West again. And just a summary of what we've been through. So you guys have accepted the concept plan. Everyone's aware of that. September 5th, we did a work session and described just the concept plan generally. We talked about our housing needs analysis, employment needs, and then we talked a little bit about the expansion process. October 3rd, the following month, we got into master planning, talked about what that might look like. For Sherwood West, we talked about annexation policy, annexation agreements, and then we talked about middle housing and options for middle housing in Sherwood West. The following day, October 4th, we did a community open house at Ridges Elementary. We'll go over those results tonight. And for tonight, November 7th, we'll talk about the hospitality zone that we're planning. We'll talk about the open house results, and then get some direction from council on the letter of interest that's due. So our letter of interest is due December 1st. We're not planning to have another work session with you. So based on the feedback tonight, we will package that into a letter of interest, and then spring of next year, April 5th is when the full application is due. And I'll have some more detailed dates here for our decision making at the end of the presentation. So first, the hospitality zone. This is just a little bit closer look at the zone. So it's about 75 acres total. It's at the corner of Chapman and Highway 99, right across from the Red Berry Barn, if you know where that is. Property sizes, they're larger lots, larger sort of rural lots, anywhere from about 4 acres all the way up to 15 acres. There is some slope. This area here is about at grade with the highway. And as you make your way to the west, there's a hill here. So you start to climb the hill. Land uses are still agriculture for some, and then probably some businesses and residences as well on large lots. the vision for this and the concept plan is to be gateway to wine country. You know, we have a geographic advantage in terms of economic development and what we can actually do on this land. And so the vision is wine and specialty agriculture. You know, we're here at the edge of the urban growth boundary, a lot of different small farms and small makers of all sorts of products, drinks and food and other. And so that would be sort of the focus of the zone. In terms of the specific uses, hotels, restaurants, tasting rooms, small scale retail, and I'm sure other as well that we just haven't identified yet. I think this would be a great place for a master plan community, whether it's just the hospitality zone itself, or we expand that out a little more and capture the multifamily zone that's proposed adjacent to it, commercial zone, open space, whatever it might be. And that gives us more control, frankly, over the land uses and what we're actually going to get there. You know, if you guys are interested in bringing in the hospitality zone as part of the ask, then we put in the letter of interest. And then we really get into the details after the application is done. We'll get into the comprehensive planning, any allowed uses, and then the design standards as well. I think that's it for the hospitality zone. I guess the point here is that, you know, staff, we don't really see any major hurdles in implementing the hospitality zone. I think we will look at this in terms of, is it a commercial zone? Is it an industrial zone? Is it a hospitality zone? That's maybe something completely different. We'll likely get a land use attorney on board and figure out how to develop the actual zoning, how it complies with state laws as well. So I'll stop here and see if there's any questions, but I just wanted to touch on it briefly before we actually get into any decision making.
Yeah, and if I understand that correctly, I mean, for the letter, it's just, we don't have to get into a lot of detail. It's just a letter, and we'll have time to work through the details of what that works. Because I think as a council, we'll have specific goals for that hospitality zone. And we'll want to frame that up in a way that under state law, metro, potential changes to state law, et cetera, which we're all facing right now, that we're creating the most certainty that we can that we actually achieve those goals.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah.
So for the letter of interest, I think all we need to put on there is anticipated housing units and jobs is kind of the minimum. And so
We can do that zone by zone, whatever our ask is, we do.
at large, I believe, Erica.
So if we ask for the whole thing, we don't have to specify in this zone, we think it's gonna be this mix.
Correct.
Okay.
I think
Yeah, we have all that information in the overall concept plan itself.
And for the letter, I mean, we could say something as simple as up to, just so as we work through the detail, we can get that final decision. One, in time for you guys to put together the official
Final
ask,
package.
assuming we get there, and then get that to Metro.
Other questions, comments on the hospitality zone? All right, leave it there. Open house summary. So we estimate about 75 to 100 in attendance. We had 52 sign the sign-in sheet. Anecdotally, people were with either one or two others, so that's what the attendance number. And then we got 46 survey responses in. And thank you for everyone who was there. So the results, and just I guess a caveat of this, you know, we didn't run statistical analysis on this, meaning that, you know, at a certain point when you're collecting data based on the population and the number of survey
people.
Exactly.
what's that?
It's
Not
not
enough people.
46. Yeah, it's not-
We didn't even run the analysis. It's likely not. So, you know, there's a number based on our population. We didn't even run the analysis. I think just it was a kind of a, I won't say informal survey, but it's not like we were doing data on health or something like that, whereas you want to get the statistical analysis right. We didn't do that. So just wanted to put that out there. So the first question is, where do you live? 45% of the respondents live within Sherwood West, 35% within the city, 13% within either Washington, Multnomah, or Clackamas counties, but outside of Sherwood West and outside of the city. So somewhere in the county, not in Sherwood West or the city. And then completely outside of all three of our counties was 7%. So not sure
And there was, how many, it was 46 respondents?
46 respondents, yeah.
So for the folks inside the city, that's what?
Would be 16 responses.
Sorry,
yeah.
I was right up there. I didn't see it.
No, no worries.
Yeah, that's definitely not a rigorous
Not a representative sample.
analysis of what the community thinks.
Second question, do you own or have property under contract in Sherwood West? 59% own or have property under contract in Sherwood West that responded to the survey, and 41% did not own or have property under contract in Sherwood West. Our key question was, what area makes the most sense to be brought into the UGB? And with 64% said all of Sherwood West, 25% said some of Sherwood West, and 11% said none of Sherwood West.
Can you go back to the slide before? So there were 27 who had property under contract, now go back. And 28 said bring it all in. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There isn't necessarily a one-to-one there, but.
True, but
I will go to this one as well, the next slide, which is for Sherwood residents only. And this is interesting, and we didn't really get into the details of this data, but it seems like there's some overlap where people are living in city limits and also potentially own or have property under contract in Sherwood West. So
You can have, it might be I mean, I know there's some brokers that live in town that work for some of those companies are getting property under contract. It could be.
Right. And then I'm Sherwood, correct. And so for this, for Sherwood residents only, we asked the same question. 65% said bring in all of Sherwood West, 30% said roughly bring in some of Sherwood West, and then 6% said none. I didn't have on this presentation what people circled for, if they said some, but that information was in the packet. You can, if you have questions on that.
Any sense of general, was there a general theme or was it all over the place?
It was kind of all over the place. There were some north, some south, some
near the high school.
some near the high school. Yeah, I think in that case, it was gonna be their specific interest. I don't care, but not my property,
Not
or,
near my property, not.
Or I don't care, but I do want.
or, yeah, nothing else, but make sure you get my I think it was some,
Hard to say.
stuff
A
like.
lot of the individuals I talked to, it was very like, there's my property is where this park is, it was a lot of that kind of questions.
Yeah, there were some people I talked to that didn't want, they were like in Sherwood now, but Sherwood West is on the other side of Elwood, and I don't want that part to commit. Yeah, so it's just NIMBY.
And that was it. That was it on the survey results. Any other questions or comments on that?
That's surprising to me. I mean, obviously, people who have an interest in Sherwood West are overrepresented, which we expected, so.
And I appreciate you guys putting this data together, but it doesn't really help.
Yeah, kind of take it with a grain of salt kind of thing. Yeah.
And so what I'll get to at the end of the presentation is, if you guys are, we certainly can do more outreach and make it more formal and that type of thing. And that's certainly the skill, we have that skill within the planning department. So, if you guys want information from the public, let us know tonight. We can, or soon, and we can actually get that information for you, make it a little more formal.
And we don't need that for December 1st. That's more for the final ads.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to rush something there. I think, I don't want to repeat my comments from last time, but I think we have to be thoughtful about how we get that information to make the feedback meaningful.
The question
We get 2,000 responses, but if we're not framing up the questions in the right way, they're not any more meaningful than the 29 we got.
it's so nuanced. There's some education that has to occur before you frame up the question.
Yeah, I think, we're happy to throw out some recommendations as well for public engagement, try and get the feedback that you're looking for. Let us know if you'd like more. So we'll get to that in the slides here. So in terms of the letter of interest and next step due December 1st, it's not binding. I think we've been clear on that, meaning that you can say something now and for the full application, do something different. It's not binding. It is, though, it's going to send an indication to the public as to, what we're looking at. It will also allow us to start the process of the full application to Metro as well, based on the information. One important piece that I don't think we've we've really made clear, and if we've just landed on this as staff, is that in order to actually prepare this application and submit it by the April 5th date, we're gonna need some clear direction from you guys by the end of January. That's just that as far as we can push it and still put together an
So that's
application.
basically the size, scope and
We need,
zoning.
What I
potential
was gonna
zoning.
ask you.
yeah, we need some specifics on what you want us to put in the application. Yep, by the end of January.
Okay.
And so just thinking that out, we can do, we have about the end of January is about 3 months-ish, 2.5, 3 months. So work session in December, probably first meeting, and then a work session in January. And then we get that feedback from you guys at the end of January is like we'll be looking at.
And when's our drop dead, like go, no go? Is that the March timeline that when you need the resolution?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so I think work sessions now through January, probably 2 more, if you guys want them. And then in March, we will actually bring a resolution to you guys for adoption. If you guys want to bring something in, here's the.
I would probably plan on a February work session as well, because we can always cancel it, but
Yeah, sure, we want to plan on, what's what we've basically been on one.
I don't want you to come with a resolution and us having not had. Maybe it was something important we would have wanted to talk about in February.
Agreed. I think we need a January work session too to kind of finalize.
I think we should have one every month.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
I think we should have one in March too.
Yeah, well, why don't we just plan on once a month?
One of them.
We right now have them scheduled the first of each month, so
Keep them going.
December and January, so.
You know us, lots of questions.
Well, add February, March.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah, we could definitely do that, so.
And then, yeah, resolution in March. One thing that we are working on now is, so you guys have accepted the concept plan. There's the plan itself and then a lot of appendices, a lot of detail in there. We are working right now on we're calling a refinement to the concept plan where we're studying the North District, the mixed employment zone here on the north end. And we have a consultant on board that's going to look at, how do we crack this in terms of development ASAP? So we're going to get a list of infrastructure improvements that are needed, a refined cost for utilities and infrastructure. We will look at, feasibility for the types of industries that we're looking for and sort of an economic development study as well. So that's ongoing right now. And we'll bring that to you guys in March as well. So it'll be kind of an update to the concept plan itself, really refining the findings and the study for that North District.
For the January meetings, it would be great, and we talked a little bit about this, but having some options. I'm not trying to forecast what they'll be, but they get around here are options from the whole thing to if we're gonna do part of it, what does that look like and what should we be thinking about? Obviously, we have our housing needs analysis. It would probably be the first thing, and then land readiness is the next thing. And so what are, just from your guys' perspective, because you're the experts, the detail out there, what some of those options are? With the mix of jobs and housing.
Do you guys want that in January?
Well, I'm just thinking you'll need to know that by the end of
Yeah.
January, right?
Yes, so actually, we can bring that in December, actually.
Okay, that would be great.
So yeah, I think we can bring that and I think we can put some, give you some options, like you said. No ask to full ask and then step in between and then considerations for each of those. Hey, if you don't bring anything in, here's what you need to look out for. If you bring in the whole thing, here's what it means. If you bring in some, here's what it means and the pros and cons of each of that. For example, we might say, if you're going to do a partial ask, make sure you bring it all the way down into this area to make sure we can service it with infrastructure and whatever it is, stuff like that. So we give you some feedback.
I thought we needed to specify in our letter. What kind of ask, like how big of an ask we were going for. Did I misremember that?
This first, like this
In
one.
Letter of
Right
interest.
Yes, so they would like an area. Or.
Yeah.
Because we have to get to jobs, we have to get to a jobs and housing number.
Right, so I think you guys are giving us a preliminary answer and then we're gonna talk about it in even more detail. And then you guys give us a final
So
answer.
today you need the preliminary answer.
Yes.
Yes.
And then we can talk about it in more detail.
Yep.
So we can
Change it.
say more and then scale and then.
I wanted to say, well, let's preliminarily ask for the whole thing.
I think the language I'd like to see is up to, because.
Yeah, up to, yeah.
I think that's fine, and because we have a lot of work to do, and exactly what that, so that I don't want to send the wrong signal to the public. Okay. Yeah.
And then I would make sure you put in there that our intention is to include new zoning types, including multiple middle housing zone types that are new, the hospitality zone type that is new, and I would also say that we may utilize multiple master plans.
One gigantic one.
Or one, yeah, I'm up to, right?
But yeah,
I liked everything Doug just said.
yeah, I think that's good, and I don't think we don't have to get in a letter about how to implement those zoning types, because we still got a lot of research to do.
Yep.
Like hospitality is gonna be very new for the region, it could be a new base type, it could be a overlay of existing types, there's all kinds of ways to do that, we just need to understand.
But by
Pros
saying,
and cons of both.
I just want to list all these things we might do, right? We may not do them all, but if we have it in our letter, then
and by
somebody's gonna
saying
come back later and say, oh, that's new.
up to 1,200 and whatever many acres, then you guys can figure out how many housing and how many jobs. Have a concept plan, that was all in.
It was all in the concept plan itself, so.
I think it's good feedback and that's a good approach. I think it's a good approach to the letter of interest.
So in terms of process, do we need, I mean, staff can obviously work on the letter. Do you guys want to have the letter brought back to the council meeting? Are you okay with staff just reviewing that with myself or someone else and just getting it out the door? And what are your thoughts?
They got our,
I don't need to say it.
yeah, if they know, I mean, Dan didn't have any, yeah,
Okay,
thanks, sure.
so we just do a quick review. And
Yeah,
get it.
you guys run in front of you guys, yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good. I think this is my last slide, just to reiterate, staff is sort of at hand if you guys are looking for, so we'll provide the alternatives, I think give you some more technical input about land uses and sizes and what that would cover in terms of our needs. But we're available for anything else as well, more public outreach, other analysis, I think we just want to help you guys make an informed decision, so.
Awesome. Any other questions for staff?
Just make sure we're rolling on the changes we need to make for annexations agreements, so that that's in place, at least the placeholder version is in place before the UGB.
Of course, and I think it's just worth saying, we'll say this to you over and over again, but basically, if the city is not ready, meaning, elected officials are not ready to pass the ordinance to allow development, it's not happening. The thing that we got to look out for is Metro might put a condition that we finish our comprehensive planning within 3 years, for example. And then, okay, we got to do it, then we're not in compliance with the ask, but up until that timeline, the developer can't just come in and plop their
I
application.
know, I
down.
feel better. We've been talking this annexation agreement and beefing up that part of our code for a long time now. I just feel better if we're concurrently working on it. There's no reason, as you said before,
We have
there's
really,
no reason not to.
no, we have really good draft language that you've already seen, so
And I-
we've gotten good feedback, so we can.
Right, and I
Keep moving.
think just to amplify what Doug's saying is, part of the concern is we've been working with the governor's office on their housing framework, which is the new 3414, and the governor wants to bring it into this short session. Who knows what's gonna end up in that once it gets into the sausage making of the legislative process, so we wanna, I think part of the urgency is just, who knows what's gonna get passed in that session. I mean, they tried to get the Metro workaround with land use.
Right.
So we just wanna make sure we're protected.
When is the short session happening?
It starts in January. And it's done, when's the end of the Sunny Dive for the short session? So 30, February, something, right?
So that would be, we would know the outcome of that before we have to pass the,
Yes.
which is good. Because
Yes,
that could change my opinion on doing an ask at all.
well, if they try to do something dumb.
They try to do
yes.
something really.
Well, the
sporadic.
same as if, like you said, Metro put some conditions on, if we find they put conditions on that are unreasonable, we can pull our, right?
I think he's saying after they
They would put conditions after
On
we
their order.
applied, so.
But we could even then, before the Metro Council makes a decision at the end of 2024, we could pull our ask at that point.
Before they make a decision, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. mhm.
We would.
And we could decide not to do the ask if the state does some really swirly thing in the
Right.
sort system.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, we're just, those are hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Just, trying to make sure we understand.
Yeah, I think ideally, if stuff started to come down or changes were happening that we didn't like before Metro makes a decision would be good. Yeah, I'd recommend that. But yeah, we'll keep you posted all the way through to the end.
I'd rather do it before we actually.
Of course, I think that's ideal.
But if the short session ends in February, then I think our timeline is good, at least on the state level.
Yeah, and that gives us till the next long session, to make sure we have 7 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. Any other questions for staff?
No.
Eric, Erica, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
Appreciate it, and
Thanks, Eric.
a lot, I know that, and I think we all know that, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned for 15 minutes, and we'll start at 7 o'clock.
An efficient work session, Mayor.
I spoke to you soon, March 10th. March 10th.